Amazing grace, how sweet the sound.
Yep, on marriage. So the Supreme Court has made a decision that, people who are gay can be married. And this has created quite a turmoil for some of us. As congregations want votes and pastors want to do their own thing, and the answer is conversation. And that was not a Liz Eaton and Craig Satterlee sat in a room and made a decision. That was decided as part of the 2009 decision. Church-wide Assembly determined that the question on marriage belongs in the congregation. So you need to have the conversation. Now, what does that conversation mean? Probably a vote is a bad idea. Terrible idea. Almost as bad as voting on whether we're going to undo the baptized and come to communion thing, which we're not. But so don't vote. Have the conversation. One congregation had the conversation. The pastor was with the church council. The pastor was pretty clear this wasn't going to go anywhere until the council all kind of sat down and talked about it and realized they didn't have a problem. They were worried about those people who might have a problem with it, right? So it's not going to be unanimous, but you need to have the conversation. The synod council and the pastoral staff of your synod have had the conversation, and we have come up with 4 things. 1, we are called to be pastors to rostered leaders and congregations. So doing weddings as a matter of course is not in our job description, right? And yet, especially Dave and Sarah have a bit of history and are probably going to be asked to do that. So we will talk things through, including the bishop, when these invitations arise. Secondly, we will work with the pastor of the congregation. So there is no triangulating. I'm really mad at, who am I looking at? Pastor Kathleen. So I'm going to get the bishop to marry me to show her. We're not going to do that. Secondly, we will only do same-sex marriages in congregations that have had the conversation and have agreed that they are welcome there, right? So we're not going to haul the bishop in to St. John's in Saginaw, where Connie has said, we're not there yet, and force the issue, right? And fourth, it's customary among the Conference of Bishops that when we're involved in same-sex marriage, we let each other know, so that in case the news gets hold of it. So we have had the conversation. Because we understand that in our synod, there are places that are like, yes, we need to do this. And there are people, no, we're not. We have one pastor who was greeted at the door with, if you ever have a same-sex marriage in this church, I will kill everyone involved.
Oh my.
Yep. Yep. And we have a lot of congregations that are going to have to go back to this. Okay. There's a new group in our synod called Open
Hearts, Open Church.
And they are getting themselves together to be a resource to help people have the conversation. Okay? Questions on marriage?
Bishop?
Yeah.
Would you describe what it means to have the conversation? Who's in the conversation?
What I'm saying is that I would begin with my church council. Right? And your church, it depends on what your church council is. If it's like church councils make these decisions in your congregation, you've had a conversation. If you know that if we don't have a meeting, congregational meeting, and discuss this, people are going to burn the church down, then I would probably have a congregational meeting. Right? Yeah.
Bishop,
Yeah.
so, this is Dana.
Yep.
If we're not voting on it, so, like, my council's gonna talk about it
Yeah.
next month, and
Right.
for us, it's really not a big deal.
Right.
But, I was thinking I need to put a motion on the table just so.
No, I'm talking about the synod, what is it? The congregational council could surely pass a motion.
Okay,
I'm talking about an up and down congregational vote,
okay.
right?
If you don't have consensus, it's not gonna work.
It's not going to work, right? Right. And it may be, I mean, it could get weird. It could be, one congregation is like, you can do same-sex marriages, but not in the building. And that seems weird to me, but okay, right? Others have said, Pastor, you've always made this decision. It's your decision. Get that in writing so the council can't say, you know, I wash my hands of this. No, get that in writing so it's, the council entrusted me with this. Right? Yep.
Bishop,
Yeah.
Kristen Boston again. My council's obsessed with this idea of having the congregation vote, which I agree is a bad idea.
Right.
Can you just say more so I have something to take back to them to explain why?
Voting turns into winners and losers. So someone has to win, someone has to lose. So basically you're going to divide the church. And someone's going to win. Right? So let's sit around the bonfire and throw gas on it.
Bishop, this is Bev Durkin.
Yeah.
I'm part of the Open Hearts Open Church. And one of the things that we are suggesting is to start off with a Bible study.
Yes.
And that's a way to involve the congregation and talk about how we read the Bible. So.
Because that is the issue. You know, and so when I go into congregations and they point to Leviticus, and so, well, Leviticus also says, let no one who is blind or has a blemish of the eye to draw near to offer the bread of his God. You need to know that 15 minutes ago we just broke the Levitical code. And they're like, it's in there? I'm like, have you read the Bible? I've read selected verses, right?
Yeah.
You can't have ham for potluck.
Yeah, you can't have ham for potluck either, or Easter dinner. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Bishop,
Yeah.
Betsy again.
Yep,
Okay, I'm just speaking from my experience.
Yeah.
Pre the government making the decision
Yeah.
I did. Churches making decisions sort of out there in the objective stratosphere about a possibility.
yeah,
In my experience, always goes
bad,
badly.
yeah,
Churches making a decision because they know somebody who's in the community.
right.
Whether it's the church community or the broader
Right.
community, and they know this is coming up, so there's a context, a concrete context, we know these people, goes very differently.
You're totally right, yes.
I'm highly reluctant as a pastor in a parish to have just out there conversation.
Right, so you're waiting for
If
Fred and Joe
someone-
to show up,
If someone shows up,
right,
and this is what I did in my last call, a couple showed up, now it wasn't about marriage, but it was about joining the church.
Yeah.
And I went to council and I said, I will not let them join the church if you, no matter what you believe, cannot be Christian.
That's
and
totally
loving
right.
in response
Yep.
to them. And so as a council, I need to know, had each one of you say yes or no to this, because I will tell them, no, go find another church.
yes,
But it was a very different conversation
right,
because
because it's real,
it's real, their faces they know.
right.
And I just put that out there.
No, I totally agree, which means some of our pastors, some of us need to be patient.
Yes. There's a time as well as a place
Exactly.
and process.
Yeah,
Now, Bishop, just in response to that, Jessica Hahn again.
yep,
Does that rush the conversation when you have it?
well, that's a good question.
And, I would say, okay, again, from my experience, part of being a pastor is learning discernment of time, and I can see this with this particular couple, I could see this coming a long way.
Yeah, right,
Because
right.
they started attending the church and they did go away.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it wasn't the church that is like, oh yes, we love this issue, let's do this. I mean, this was not the church to join, if you're looking for an easy time. So, I mean, something that I think as pastors, we need to be encouraged to develop our skills as discerning people, leaders.
Right,
And I think there is actually some time given to you if you're discerning about the fact that this has now entered your horizon because these people are worshiping in your community.
And I think we have to remember that all these things, they're always about real people.
exactly,
Right.
yes,
This
yes,
is not just an abstraction.
that's right.
But it's very hard to convince communities of that unless you have real people.
Right.
Who are
Well,
involved.
that's why wait for the real people.
Right, and that's where.
Well, I had someone up north tell me there are no gay people up here. So why do we have to have the conversation? Yeah,
Bishop Satterlee?
They
Yeah.
might wait a while.
My congregation's public support now for gay marriage is, the odds of a couple of gay people coming to Whitehall and wanting to get married are fairly slim.
right.
But
Oh, not true.
But our public support was one of the ways that we were able to do what Dan Stonebeck
Yes.
asked about.
Yes,
We are not that congregation that put in their newsletters that we're dead set against what the Supreme Court
Yes.
said and they're all going to hell.
right,
Our public support with the little flag and everything was a way of saying we are not what
Right.
we think we are.
yep. Yep. You see why you have to have the conversation? Because it varies context to context, right?
The other thing, this is Betsy again, the other thing I got, which is kind of interesting, and it was in our denomination, very interesting phenomenon. The last time the Methodist Church had a vote,
Yeah,
I got probably half a dozen emails from people who belong to the Methodist Church, including rostered leaders, who said, do you welcome
Yep.
LGBT into your community?
Yep.
And I said, yes, we not only welcome them, but we welcome them as leaders. Now, nobody ever showed up from those communities,
Right.
but it was an interesting conversation to have. Not because of our time.
I've got 4 more topics to get through.
I
What time are we done?
You got 10 minutes.
Oh, great.
I just wanted to bounce something off of what Betsy said in that, with the conversation, I think it has to be something you bring up again. I mean, you can't just bring it up and know that it's decided, because as people have those experiences with real situations, and as the congregation changes and evolves, that whole culture changes and evolves, and the acceptance,
Things
I
change.
think, develops over time. So just because it's like, no, no, no right now, doesn't mean there's some experience and then 2 or 3 years down the road, you don't have it again.
Was blind.